I'm not on? No. I'd like to call our meeting to order and begin with a roll call, please.
Okay. Dr. Beebe?
Here.
Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi? Here. Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford is absent. Mr. Garvey? Here. Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio? Present. Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Hill?
Here.
Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Dr. Moranti?
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Ms. Orange Jones is absent. Mr. Romer?
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. Ms. Smith? Here. Ms. Smith is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'd like to begin with the invocation to be given by Terry Johnson from Bossier Parish Schools, and then we'll follow that up with Mr. Michelle giving the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we pray that you will give us your gift of knowledge, that we might always make the best decisions for the good of all the school children of Louisiana. We pray that you give us the wisdom to know and define our tasks, the strength to build and refine our educational goals, and the courage to persevere as necessary. We ask for your direction that we might make unselfish decisions for those we serve. Yes. We pray that all who are assembled here have a safe journey home. We thank you for all your past and future blessings. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank each of you for volunteering to do that. We really appreciate it and want to welcome everybody here this morning. I'd like to begin with, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any objection to approving the agenda? Hearing none, so moved. I need a motion to approve the minutes of January 15th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any objection or any changes? Hearing none, so moved. At this moment, I'd like to invite the State Superintendent to give his remarks.
Members, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted just to give you an update on the intense and increased support that we are providing to teachers for the transition to new academic expectations. We have established several different support structures at the superintendent level. Our network teams are working directly with superintendents. We have established in every district a district planning guide and district planning team so that every single school system has this team set up that has a week or biweekly meeting with department staff to go over the decisions that need to be made for next year. And we are doubling the size of our teacher leader program to 4,000 next year so that 4,000 teachers and principals will be trained specifically on our curriculum tools. As part of that, as you know, we have begun releasing sample test items or questions for next year so that teachers can be more aware of what exactly assessments will look like in the future. We also this week, I think most exciting, released our curriculum package for next year. Our curriculum package entails three things. Number one, a review of published curriculum from publishers across the country and Louisiana as to how aligned they are with the new expectations. We group them into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 expectations. And if a school board or school system wants to choose any of those curriculum, they may. But we give them guidance as to how well they're aligned with the new expectations. Second, in English and math, at every one of those grade levels, we provide a curriculum guidebook that provides a long-term plan, sample units, which are groups of texts, themes, and activities, as well as half of the year scoped out in terms of lessons, so actually down to the lesson level. And then finally, we are going to be providing curriculum training on all Tier 1 curriculum statewide. As you know, the Eureka Math curriculum, which is developed at LSU, is a Tier 1 curriculum, meaning it is very aligned with the new expectations. We're doing statewide trainings. We already have more than 1,000 educators signed up for that. Also, core knowledge, which is developed at the University of Virginia, is a Tier 1 curriculum in English Language Arts in the primary grades. We'll be providing professional development on that as well. So at multiple layers, we are supporting teachers, superintendents, and principals on this transition into the next year. Wanted you to hear about these processes. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be producing the assessment guides for next year's assessments, as we always do around this time, providing very detailed information. And this information goes out on a weekly basis to superintendents in the newsletter and such, as well as on their conference calls and in their network meetings. But I just wanted you to be aware of it and wanted to provide you an update on that process, as I know that question of support and our plan to provide increased and intensive support for school systems has received a lot of discussion in recent months. So I thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly happy to entertain questions and comments.
Mr. Lee.
I want to express appreciation to Superintendent White for recognizing the need to give support and in-service to teachers, to principals, to superintendents. The need was great. I think you recognize that. You are addressing it. Still has a long way to go, but I appreciate your willingness to put forth the effort, whatever it takes, to try to help those people be effective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We're trying.
Ms. Beebe.
Superintendent White, I'm greatly appreciative that you are addressing this this morning, because I do want to voice some concerns that we have communicated within the St. Martin Parish School System, and I'm sure that there are other superintendents and school districts that share the concerns. As I understand, and that you just clarified, Eureka Math is the proposed curriculum, if you will, that's identified to be a Tier 1 product. And you also announced core knowledge. The concern is for those, and you mentioned that districts have the autonomy to choose other products. The concern, and I know as a superintendent, the concern I have is that if we don't go with what is recommended in Tier 1 and we choose a product that is located in the Tier 2, then there could be possible ramifications that we didn't go along with the plan. I know that the professional development you referred to that will occur during in June, that the focus will be on the Eureka Math, and if we deviate from Eureka Math and we go to something different, then what support will, I'll ask that question to answer. I still have some other points to make, but what support will those districts who deviate from the recommended Tier 1 product? And then I'm very much concerned, as other superintendents and central staff personnel, that in the past we had a process, a textbook committee review, we had textbook caravans, and teachers were afforded the opportunity to review the textbooks, and that process, if I'm understanding correctly, has been modified, and and I know that you referenced before that the opportunity has been available for textbook reviews, but obviously we didn't get the message because we feel that we haven't had an opportunity other than the initiatives that we took to invite publishers in. And in fact, on March 12th, we will invite Eureka Math and several other publishers to come in to share their product. I do know that my staff and I reviewed core knowledge materials, and we have a concern that it's some of the questions are at the knowledge level in Bloom's taxonomy. So again, I'm speaking on behalf of several superintendents that if we don't go with the Tier 1 product, then, I mean, are we going to be chastised, or is the support going to be provided to us for the products we choose?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of things. Number one, if you want us to review any curriculum, I was speaking with Superintendent Lejeune yesterday and Jeff Davis in Ms. Bophy's district, for example. He has a Tier 3 curriculum that historically they've been using. They'd like us to review it so that we can point out where we see alignment and where we see no alignment. And I thought there was a very helpful email. He was very straight up. This is our curriculum. This is what we're using, but we want to understand how to use it. So we will review any curriculum that you want to submit, and we'll provide information back to you as to how exactly it aligns and doesn't align, that level of guidance. Second, you should know that the legislature there are bills to reconsider the textbook adoption process this year. That process, as you know, is a once every 7-year process that then results in a textbook caravan and a textbook repository, which is all fine, except that in today's world, these textbooks can change overnight on an iPad, so we really just need to update it. We've been just doing a kind of stopgap process while the legislature updates it. I hope that Senator Appel and Representative Hoffman, who are carrying simultaneous bills in both houses, will be successful, and we are supporting what they're doing, and I hope that we will pass a better textbook adoption process. But it should result in statewide contracts and the maintained process for the depot, both text-based or paper pencil and online. Finally, with respect to professional development, we are going to fund full professional development for Tier 1 curriculum, fully aligned. I think for Tier 2 and Tier 3, we're not working with those publishers to provide professional development. If there's something in specific that you'd like us to be helpful with, we would welcome that. We just feel like we need to pick where we spend our dollars, our limited dollars. But of course, districts are free to choose what curriculum they want, pursue what professional development they want, as they always have. And if there are ways that we can help you specifically, please let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you just discuss, Superintendent White, the timeline again? When do for instance, when do the school districts actually receive the curriculum package? And then to ensure that all of the training, as much as possible, the curriculum development, the timeline, when that will be with regard to most schools starting in early August?
Sure. A couple of months back, we published the District Planning Guide. The District Planning Guide lays out every statewide decision, certainly not every decision, but every statewide decision that districts have to make. We've been walking through a set of decisions, and one of the decisions now, Ms. Smith, is what curriculum will you be using next year. So we're working with superintendents. I see Superintendent from St. John the Baptist Parish, Kevin, good to see you, here this morning, and other superintendents as well as Dr. Beebe, to make those choices now. We put out this week all of the curriculum that we've reviewed. So the reviews are posted and links to the curriculum are posted. Almost all of our curriculum are free or very low cost. For example, Eureka Math you can either download for free and print yourself, or you can buy packaged, in a published version at a very low cost. So those are available. In terms of the guidebooks, the middle school guidebooks are all out. That will be followed immediately by the elementary guidebooks and the high school guidebooks by April. And the professional development has all been scheduled already, and teachers have enrolled. It is for the end of the school year through the summer. The trainings will ultimately total for teacher leaders over the course of the next 6 months, 15 full days of professional development provided to teacher leaders, and 4,000, meaning the average school will have 2 to 2.5 people at those trainings. So but the districts have a guide that literally sequences out when those decisions are to be made.
How will the professional development take place? Will it be with the curriculum teams that are developed, or the district teams that are developed in each area?
The district planning team is to decide which teachers and which principals attend which trainings. In other words, who goes to the curriculum trainings, who goes to the teacher leader trainings. The one of the decisions in the district planning guide that the team has to make is who is going to attend those. And then another decision is, having been trained, how will they be used when they come back to the district to redeliver?
I want to thank you for that, because I think this is going to go a long way. And one of the big concerns, I know, as you heard across the state, was we needed to have time to implement it correctly. We needed to have time to train. We needed to have time to have professional development. I think this is going to be very, very important. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Dr. Moranti?
Thank you, Superintendent White. I have a concern that we would consider, and if it's in the legislation, obviously, with centralizing our textbook adoption again. I just think we are on such a good path with the superintendents having the autonomy and how they're going to implement core and selection of their textbooks. And yet I also understand that superintendents may be asking for that. So do you think there would be an option for some of the superintendents to say, no, we want to do our own textbook adoption so that we can have those?
Yes, and Representative Hoffman and Senator Appel's bills specifically say no school system shall be compelled to have to choose any specific curriculum. They go out of their way to say that. We were very insistent on that. Representative Hoffman has long been a champion of that idea, although both agree on the idea that the state should provide guidance, and that's what we're trying to do now. Yeah.
Mr. Garvey.
Yes, I had a question for the superintendent. If I heard you right, you said earlier that if a district picks a certain curriculum that it thinks is best for its population, the department's going to help them implement that and make it work with Common Core.
Yes.
What if a particular school within a district thinks that it needs a special curriculum because of its student population? Can they get help from the department to work that out?
Absolutely. We have said that if you submit a curriculum to us, we will review it and provide you guidance as to where it aligns and doesn't align.
Okay, let me break it down one more step, really 2 steps. What if a teacher has one particular student that needs a special curriculum? Can that teacher get help from the department to customize curriculum for a particular student?
I think it's fair to say, if all capacity issues aside, we would do everything we can to make that happen.
Great, great. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. We'll move to the next item, which actually Ms. Hill has asked for a moment of personal privilege, so I want to recognize Ms. Hill.
Yes, this morning I'd like to honor one of the schools within my district that I represent, the Alumni Association, which worked diligently with this school, which is a school that is currently in the Recovery School District. However, I'd like for W.T. Whitfield and the Capital Senior High School alum to come up as I honor them. And the reason why I decided to honor this association, well, is because this has been a school that has had so many transitions over the years, so many different charter managers within the tenure of the years being under the state governance. And this association, this alumni association, have stood strongly with Capital, fighting for issues, being there for the children, regardless of what transition has taken place within the school. They've been diligently within the community, and so I just want to honor them for their hard work and their dedication to our community and to our children. And I know that even with the new charter managing group, that you guys will continue to stick by our children, work for our children and the community to make sure that our children receive and have a quality education. So with that being said, I have a certificate of appreciation that states that Carolyn Hill, 8th District member of the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, present this certificate of appreciation to the Capital Senior High Alum Association, presented on the 7th day of March, 2014. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I think Ms. Beebe, do you charge for your services, or is that you don't? All right. Thank you. If we may, let's move now, and thank you, Ms. Hill, for that moment. We appreciate it. It was good. Move to the next item, which I believe is item 5.1.
On behalf of the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee, I move to approve motions 1 and 2, and motions 4 through 11, noting that motions 4 through 10 are notices of intent, and pulling motion 3 as a read.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and before we proceed, we do have a comment card on this item 5.1. Debbie Shum. of the Louisiana Association of Principals, and then we'll move forward. Thank you. Good morning.
I think, oh, now it is. Okay. Good morning. I just want to say that I am happy to see that we are considering a lot of changes towards career and technical education, but I do want to say that we still voice a concern, and I know we have until 2017, which is when this becomes full effect, but I would like to point out that we still don't have an answer yet for what happens to students who are not able to complete either the Jump Start diploma or a Core 4 diploma. And just in looking at the rates of graduation for community and technical colleges, you know, I just recently looked up, community colleges in Louisiana currently have a 16% graduation rate for students who are enrolled with 150% of the time. And students who are in technical colleges, simply from one fall to one spring, lose almost 24% of their students. So while I think the Jump Start program is a good place for us to start, I would just like to make sure that we have our eyes on the year 2017 and that there is something that is done to address the fact that there are going to be some students who start out and think that that's the program they want to be in, but are for some reason not able to complete it or make a decision that that is not the program that they really were interested in. So I just would like to make sure that when the policies that be come into place, that by the year 2017 we have some answer specific to what happens to those students who think that they know they're not Core 4, they think they want to try the program, they can't complete it, and what graduation or what diploma would they come out with.
Thank you for your
Can
comment.
I ask a question? Are you formulating a recommendation as to what you'd like to see?
I am currently working with some
Okay.
principals on that,
Good,
and if
yeah.
we can present it, we would be happy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the table to take a certain set of motions.
Yes,
We do have a motion, we have a second, we have a read, item 3.
But can we vote on the global?
Yeah, we'll vote on the first on the items for approval. Was there any objection to the items for approval?
I do want the record to reflect that in motion 10, that I objected, and I just want to be consistent with yesterday's action.
Thank you.
Okay, any other objection? Hearing none, so moved. Dr. Moranti, item 3 is a read.
So the item 3 is a read. Should I just read the motion?
Sure.
Okay. On motion of Mr. Lee, seconded by Mr. Garvey, the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee deferred until the board meeting on Friday, March 7th, 2014. Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 119, Louisiana School Transportation Specifications and Procedures. Use school buses.
Good. I don't know if, I know there was language that was, everybody has it in front of you. If you remember, yesterday there was a question of the term on the school bus, and I think they were coming up with compromise language, which I believe is represented here. I don't know if the department has comment.
That's correct.
Does anybody have a question or comment regarding the compromise that I think is to everyone's satisfaction? Mr. Garvey?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to say that this compromise does tighten up the rules a little bit and gives the LEAs a little more comfort in making sure that the school buses that they are using, or that their drivers are using, are going to be in good shape.
Very well. Any other comments or questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
I'm assuming that this revision will not lengthen the 25-year life period of a bus.
I believe that's correct. Somebody would have to tell me otherwise.
It does not.
Members actually need a motion. If I will allow other comments if people have
I
comments.
move that we accept the proposed recommendation or revision.
Okay. Motion by Dr. Beebe, second by Mr. Garvey. Any further questions? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.2, Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Gio.
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I move to approve motions 1 through 5, 7 through 38, pulling motion 6, which is the MFP.
Second.
There's a motion, and there's a second by Mr. Lee. Any discussion on the items that have been moved for approval?
Oh, and 38 is a no.
And 38 is a no to the intent.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, before we actually take a vote, we do have a card on this item.
Sean, you want to speak, where's Sean? You want to speak on the
MFP. Okay, so be on the floor.
We'll review those other motions and then you come up.
So we have a motion to approve pulling item, was it 7 or 6?
It's 6, which is the MFP.
Which is there any objection to that motion?
I just want to make sure that on motion 12, that I reflect in the minutes that I oppose.
Okay, and Mr. Romer, on motions 5, 6, and 12, I'd like the minutes to reflect that I objected.
So we'll do 5 and 12 now, and then we'll
Okay.
come back on 6.
And then I also want to point out that I recused myself on items 8 through 11 and items 13 through 15.
Duly noted. Any other objection or comment to the items that were moved for approval? Hearing none, so moved. We'll move to item 6, which is a pull.
Yes, on item 6, an MFP-related item has been brought to the board's attention that deserves further discussion over the next week between the stakeholders, thus the reason for pulling the motion. So I make a motion that we defer item 6 until a special meeting next week.
There's a motion and a second. I will just elaborate that we do have a comment card, which I will allow. We will probably look at Wednesday of next week. It's been brought to our attention an issue that superintendent's actually requested some additional time to look at. I think as long as we have a majority of members that can make that Wednesday meeting, which I think we do, it should be no problem, and give the superintendent's time to look more closely at that item. School boards as well. I would at this point like the comment card, Sean Fleming, and then I'll allow any additional comments. Yes,
I have a
Dr. Beatty.
question. Is it a morning meeting?
It'll be a morning meeting, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so you haven't set the...
We haven't set it, and we need to make sure we have adequate numbers of people, but we are targeting Wednesday for that meeting.
Is this going to be a special board meeting?
Yes.
I have a textbook.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. Sean Fleming, I'm the Deputy Director of the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. I did listen to y'all yesterday. I do feel under the weather, so I'll try and keep my thoughts clear. But a lot of parents of students with disabilities are still not content with the lack of looking at inequities across school systems in terms of funding for students with disabilities. Do not feel like it was adequately addressed. In the MFP this year, it seems to redefine what a local school system is on the third sentence, even though that's inconsistent with language throughout. And Mr. Richard pointed out yesterday how that plays out later. But last year when we discussed this, and I brought it, basically laid it out, is I was told that y'all couldn't change funding for charter schools because that's in charter school law. They're based on an average, whereas it's a weighted for traditional schools. And so when the MFP task force came up with the solution to double the rate of the high cost fund, I guess y'all can do that. It's unclear because the charter school law says it's on an average is how the MFP would be used. So I don't know if y'all are going to do that, and it's fine if y'all do. I do want to inform y'all of two big things. That was already done, and yesterday was a good example of how that has failed. In 2009, y'all had $1.9 million in the high cost fund. This year there's $3.8 million. And schools that have requested funding for students who cost more than, I think it's $33,000, the really high-cost kids, only got barely half, I think it's 53 or 55% of what they asked for. So they didn't get what it costs to serve that student, as what the MFP is designed to do, to provide the minimum amount to serve each student. And it was really disturbing. And I hope y'all heard this the same way I and the other parents in this room heard it, and other special ed directors who understand federal law on serving students with disabilities. A gentleman got up and basically said he didn't serve a student because the school that sent him didn't request the high-cost funds for that student. That is a clear violation of federal law. I just want to make sure that I'm assuming the department is investigating that and following up with that, because school systems are not allowed to deny free and appropriate public education to a school, to a student with disabilities based on resources. Those two decisions are separate. So when he said that, there was a gasp that came through my phone of the parents in this room. And people say, I can't believe he just said that. But it highlights the issue, is you have, I'll wrap it up, small schools. We're setting up an infrastructure of basically small schools, and if you expect for those schools to accept and serve all students, your funding mechanism needs to be equitable and actually cover the cost. The task force never looked at the cost that it would actually cost to serve a student. It looked at the cost of the state, which doesn't equate in terms of somebody on the ground. So I just want to put all those things for y'all to consider, and I appreciate your time.
Appreciate your comments, Mr. Fleming. There is a, Ms. Bovee.
I listened to the testimony yesterday. That's not what I heard. I heard that the previous school did not apply for the funds, and so he wasn't eligible to apply for those funds, so he had to use other funds to serve the student. And we have all this on tape, so we can go back and figure out what the man heard, or what the man
Yes, you do.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate that. Any other comment? Yes, Dr. Moranti.
But I think that our gentleman is correct in that the school provided the resources because they weren't requested the year before at the other school. So the other school is at fault for not providing the resources for that, if I'm hearing it correctly, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Any other comment? There is a motion to defer. There is a second for that motion. Is there any objection to defer this item until the special meeting? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.3, Educator Effectiveness Committee. Ms. Bophy? On behalf of the Educator Effectiveness Committee, I move to approve motions 1 and 2.
I'll second that.
There is a motion and there is a second. Any comment? Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.4, the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee. Mr. Garvey?
Yes, on behalf of the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee, I would like to move approval of item 1 and pull item 2 as a read.
There's a motion and there's a second by Mr. Lee. We do have a comment card, but let us do item 2 as a read. We'll approve item 1 first. Is there any objection or comment to approval of item 1? Ms. Phoebe.
Mr. Romer, we're in School Innovation and Turnaround?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd ask for the pulling of,
I think it's item 2. I think
it's 3.1, and, well, maybe in your book, okay.
yeah, it's 3.1, and that would be item 2. So motion
Okay.
1 would not affect you in terms of what you want to pull.
Okay.
Okay? So is there any objection to the approval of item 1? Any comment? Hearing no objection, so so moved. Item 2, Mr. Garvey.
On motion of Ms. Bofi, seconded by Ms. Orange Jones. The School Innovation and Turnaround Committee recommends that the board approve as the notice of intent revisions to Bulletin 126, Charter Schools, Section 103, Definition, Section 105, Purpose of Charter Schools, Section 505, Eligibility to apply for a Type 4 charter school, Section 1101, Charter School Evaluation, Section 1103, Alternate Evaluation of Charter Schools, Section 1303, Extension Review, Section 1503, Charter Renewal Process and Timeline, Section 1903, I must have repeated something there. Material amendments for BESE authorized charter schools, Section 1905. Non-material amendments for BESE authorized charter schools, Section 2301. State funding, Section 2303. Federal funding, Section 2713. At-risk students, and Section 2909, employee benefits.
Could you do that one more time?
I can do that probably one more time, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey. I believe Ms. Beebe had requested this item be pulled in addition to it being an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. The thing is, with the item 3.1, the revisions to charter school applications, renewals, actually, I still have some concerns. I know we debated this yesterday, and the rationale offered for approval was that we would increase the rigor and the expectations for charter schools and who would be against this. But then there was the discussion about the non-traditional students, and I do recall the discussion that Ms. Hill and I brought forth, that we have those students who are placed in alternative programs. We have those students who have those educational concerns that are quite challenging, but yet we are held accountable within the traditional setting. And so if we're talking about increasing the expectation for these charter schools, in one breath, yes, we may be doing it, but then you have to look at the rest of the story, that we are allowing them to their license to be renewed even if the student, even if the score remains an F, pending student growth. Like if the student grows, for example, if the student grows 5 points, or the school grows 5 points, well then that's considered significant growth because of the population. I'm just concerned, as I communicated yesterday, that we're not providing an equitable playing field. I know Superintendent White, you did indicate yesterday, at yesterday's meeting, that you would take into consideration Ms. Hill's concern and mine, and possibly other board members, and that you would come back with a plan to address the traditional systems, vouchers, and of course charters. My question to you is, what is the rush for this? I mean, as a board, could we not give the extension to the charter groups who are coming up for renewal until such time as you have a policy that addresses all systems?
We're just talking about alternative schools now, right?
Well, no, because in the traditional systems,
But alternative schools within the traditional system or charter system?
well, no, because we have alternative programs, and that was the bone of contention, if you will, yesterday for us, Ms. Hill and me specifically, is that we have the alternative programs. We test our students, and those scores go back to the base school. They're still held accountable. The district's schools are held accountable to the student performance, and yet we're making provisions for a school with a similar population.
Well, I guess I don't, and this is why I tried to make the distinction between renewal and letter grades. And here's maybe what you can help me with. Under the proposal, letter grades remain the same. In other words, if you have a alternative school, that receives a letter grade under the same old formula everybody else does. If the charters have an alternative school, that receives a letter grade. All that we're adjusting a policy for is whether that school should be able to continue to exist. That's not an issue that district schools have. You don't have this charter framework. So in other words, every alternative school is going to continue to receive a letter grade. And I'm committed that the formula for receiving a letter grade is going to be the same in an alternative traditional district school and the same in alternative in a charter school. So I guess I don't understand how this impacts that.
Well, okay, with the traditional system, we're subject to takeover if we...
So are these schools.
But we're making a provision for that growth, that you're not going to discontinue.
No. You receive a letter grade. That letter grade can make your schools eligible for the Recovery School District. A charter school receives a letter grade. A charter school can be eligible for the Recovery School District. There's no difference. The only difference is they exist on a contract. You exist because the Constitution created a school board. They exist because BESE created a contract. All we're doing is adjusting the terms of that contract to allow that contract to continue to exist or not. That's not a circumstance that's applicable to the traditional district school. Now, maybe I can resolve this in two ways. So, in other words, I don't think that there is a common circumstance here. I really mean that. I think there are two things that are flawed with our system. Not flawed, but just need improvement. One, I actually think we need a better way of evaluating all of our alternative schools. I've said that for quite some time. And I think this could serve as a model for that. We have a problem with federal and state policy, which is that school systems choose to have alternative schools and not just call them alternative programs. That's a choice the school system makes. And the federal government says, in order to take federal money, whenever you have a school, you must evaluate all schools in the same way. So we're in a little bit of a box there. So we've got to figure out a way around that one. Two, as I said to Ms. Hill yesterday, I believe progress should be represented in all letter grades to a greater degree than it is now. And it's because we included progress that a lot of schools actually came out of AUS status last year. So the Accountability Commission in the months of August or March to August is taking up this question of progress in all letter grades. What I would ask you, Dr. Beebe, as well as other members of the board, is to participate in that process and to work with the Accountability Commission, whose job it is to advise you on matters of accountability policy. By August, they are to produce a recommendation on the role of student progress, not just how high everybody's score is, but the student progress in all letter grades. And I think that'll be a very good dialogue. I'll tell you, there are some members of the Accountability Commission who really disagree with that. They think it should be, how high are you? There are some who believe it really should be about how much progress you make. I think we're just going to have a dialogue, and I'd like to come back to you over the next 5 months with an answer on that.
Well, with that said, why would you not recommend that we postpone this policy until we get everything worked out?
Because, number one, you have schools this year whose contracts are coming up after this school year. We can't ask them to complete the year and then just turn around, vote on the contract and say, oops, sorry, this is how we're judging you now.
Well, we could
waive the... And second, this doesn't have anything to do with letter grades. Traditional district schools receive letter grades. Charter public schools receive letter grades. Non-public schools receive a cohort index that's on the same formula as letter grades. None of this has anything to do with that. All this is about is, will you, BESE, how will you determine whether to renew your contract with them? The Constitution creates school board schools. You create charter schools. All we're asking is for an adjustment in how you review those contracts, which really is not an applicable situation to a district school because the Constitution creates school boards.
Well, okay, I guess for me, my concern, and I was the one that brought up this initially, and I think that's the struggle that I have with the board, because of the policies. When we are creating policies, they're all on so many different levels. There's not a playing field in my eyesight, speaking for myself. And with that being said, Superintendent White, after reading the policy on yesterday and having a discussion, what I pointed out is that you have schools that are currently under AUS status. However, these schools are dealing with the same population that some of these charter schools are dealing with in regards to socioeconomic status, in regards to community, in regards to academically. And so the point that I was trying to make yesterday to make sure that it's leveled out is that those schools that may be on the AUS status, if they do show growth of 5 or more points, that we should honor that. And even with the scholarship program, because like the young lady stated yesterday, they have kids coming that are 2 or 3 letter grades behind that can't read on an 8th grade level, but maybe reading on a 3rd grade level. And so with that being said, I even stated even with the scholarship program, if a school shows 5 or more points of growth, that should not hinder them to say, well, because you're an F school, you can't have increase of enrollment. If they show that growth, because we're all dealing with the same population of students.
So I think you're saying we should honor them in the letter grade, right?
The growth at
Right.
SPS
Yeah, exactly.
growth.
So we're going
The
to
number.
take between March and August. The Accountability Commission, whose job it is to advise this board on those issues, is actually taking up this exact question, and we're going to work it through. And so I would just ask, if you want to participate, please come to those meetings. I think the next one is in April, and look forward to having that dialogue. I happen to agree with you, Ms. Hill, on your perspective on this issue.
We do have a comment card. Sean Fleming.
Good morning again. Still Sean Fleming, still with Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. I think Ms. Beebe's recommendation is a wise one, and I'll explain to y'all the concern. Both y'all funding mechanism and y'all accountability structure, your accountability of school grades and who gets taken over, incentivizes schools on both sides, traditional, charter, it doesn't really matter, to not serve students who don't score well. Students with disabilities tend not to score well. In Louisiana, and it's a truncation of data issue and a segregation issue. Louisiana has a history of having private schools. About 15–16% of our student population has been served in private schools, and those students tended to score higher. These came from richer families, et cetera, families who sent their kids to a private school. And that truncated a lot of our data for years on the top end. And the concern that I think Ms. Hill and you're bringing up is what you're setting up is for 5 more years, you'll have an alternative school that's going to serve a specific population. And yesterday in the discussion, I never saw a definition of non-traditional student because charter school law defines at-risk students fairly clearly, although the only one that matters is whether they're free and reduced lunch rates in terms of evaluation, whether they serve a proportionate number. But if you take an alternative school in a system that's going to serve a lot of kids with disabilities, for example, or a lot of kids on free and reduced lunch, it will enable the other schools in that district to score higher. A few months ago, I shared a parish with y'all. I won't repeat the parish. It has 6 school systems. They had 5 A's and an F. None of their A's had more than 10% of kids with disabilities, and their F had about 30%. Y'all remember that? So that's what the accountability system is already structuring. And the question is, right, do you want to make it so that alternative school gets taken over? And now we'll apply a different standard to that alternative charter school because it does serve a special segregated population, enabling that school system to succeed. And that scares parents with disabilities because what you're setting up is further incentives for school systems to set up alternative schools and segregate kids with disabilities. That is not the direction that the country and this state has been moving in. And it's not that, I don't think it's where y'all want us to move in, but that's what will happen. So y'all are kind of looking at, in my opinion, crisis. 1 minute, please.
If I may,
Yes.
and I totally appreciate your comments. I'm going to let you continue for a second. I do understand the context that what you're saying. This particular item is a little bit separate from the bigger issue that you're talking about. But I want you to go ahead, please.
Yeah. The deal is, we all acknowledge that the evaluation accountability system is flawed. That's an agreement we all have. The question is, how do we fix it? My urging to you is not to fix it for a small set of schools, which are going to call alternatives, serving non-traditional schools, that will continue for 5 years, further truncating data on the low end of certain school systems and making the comparisons apples to oranges to whatever, pie. So we can have a fair system. Y'all have control of the contracts. Y'all can tell these charter schools, if everybody agrees that the accountability system doesn't make sense, say, we will give you a waiver because we recognize you're serving a non-traditional school until we work this out, be it a year or 2 years. I think everybody would live with that. And then come up with an accountability system that actually gives schools credit for any kid they serve. And I think that's what we all want. But if you set up a system now that's going to evaluate them for the next 5 years on one set, and you're allowing those students to be pulled, you're encouraging, condoning students, non-traditional students, kids with disabilities, I'm sure fall into that mix, to be pulled out from the school systems. You build it, they will come. Other schools in that system will say, go there, because they're on a different metric than us. And that's the concern. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments, and I think the superintendent has already expressed that during the course of the next several months, that issue needs to be addressed and looked at more carefully. So we certainly appreciate your comments, Mr. Fleming.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the superintendent. If during the next 5 months the Accountability Commission changes the accountability rules for traditional public schools, does what we're doing here today prevent those same rules from applying to charters? Those same changes?
No, in fact, they would have to.
So if we make changes to the non-public, to the regular publics, those changes will also apply to the charter schools?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Superintendent White.
Yes.
Now, these charters are up for renewal in December? Usually that's when we vote on.
Yes.
Okay. So if
based on results from this year.
So we won't be taking action in August, September, or October, or November in regards to renewing charters?
With respect, you actually don't really ever take action.
Okay.
You establish rules,
okay,
and then they play by the rules. And if they play within the rules, they get renewed, and if they don't, they don't.
Okay.
So in other words, they're currently playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we're trying to create better rules so that they can know what's going to happen next year.
Okay. So I guess my question would be is if the Accountability Commission is going to meet within the next 5 months, if we defer this policy to them, it would not hinder the charters because they're not up for renewal until December. So I guess my concern would be what would be the rush to make sure that we all are on one accord on all levels?
Because this year's results, you'd be basically changing the rules after they had already played by this, after they'd already established results this year. In other words, this year, we still have 3 months left in the school year. Voting on the rules by which they should have played the game in the past is not really a best practice.
Now, I guess if you're looking at the implementation of it, the results are going to come out in May. We passed this policy now. At the end of the day, they still are, in their mind, on the policy that's already presently set, not this policy here. So we're not really hindering them because the kids are going to take the test in March and April. The results are going to come out in May. So changing the rules now, you change the rules in the middle of the game.
Well, then we have a simple question. If you believe that you should set up the rules after somebody already does what they're supposed to be doing and then judge them based on rules they were never asked to be judged on, then I would agree with your perspective. If you believe that the appropriate thing to do is to set up rules before people's results come in and then judge them based on those results, then you would not support your perspective. So that's, I think you've clearly laid it out.
Members, I think we've discussed this pretty thoroughly between yesterday and
But I
today.
need clarification, please, Mr. Romer.
Yes.
Thank you. But Superintendent White, I tend to agree with Ms. Hill. In other words, this charter group would be, or the charters would be grandfathered into the current rule and expectations. And then I agree that we need to take this up with the Accountability Commission. You said that they will be meeting in April, and I think we could defer this a few months until such time.
Actually, I want to be clear. You and Ms. Hill are talking about two different things. You have asked me questions about the charter contract. School boards create a contract with the state through the Constitution. Charter schools create a contract between the board and the charter school organization, and unfortunately, we need to adjust the rules of the contract so as to be fair when we make a judgment about continuing the contract. Ms. Hill is raising issues of the letter grade. All schools, charter, traditional, non-public even, if they participate in the scholarship program, their school performance score is on the same mechanism, their letter grade's on the same mechanism. We are taking up questions of the letter grades March through August. I want to be unequivocal about this. You are not voting on policy that has anything to do with letter grades, but the entire discussion that we've been having here is about letter grades. The Accountability Commission is taking up a letter grades question March through August. We will report back to you, and I happen to agree with Ms. Hill's perspective on letter grades. Your concern with this vote has nothing to do with letter grades. It's about the contract that you established with schools to exist.
The renewal process. I'm
Correct.
clear on that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying or asking is why the urgency to pass this policy when you the renewal takes place, as I understood, December.
Mr. Chairman.
So again, we could have discussions. Well, I'm just voting no.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, is this a notice of intent?
It is a notice of intent, and what we will need is I need a motion to approve as notice of intent the changes to Bulletin 126 as presented by the department.
So moved.
Technically, there's a motion for that, Mr. Garvey.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Gio. Is there objection?
Objection.
No.
Ms. Beebe and Ms. Hill. Any other objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item.
The next item is item 6, which is Board Advisory Council reports. You have stuff from the Non-Public School Council as well as the Superintendent's Advisory Council. The motion is to receive the minutes and approve the agendas.
I'll move the motion to accept.
Ms. Moranti?
I'll second it.
Mr. Gio? We have any questions? We have any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item. That's it? Okay. We are adjourned.